It's like, this is the clearest, like, fixed fight you're ever gonna see. But look at this guy holding his hands up and watch. Watch this. He, like, literally shows him his chin, like, and he goes down. It's so fake. Look at, I mean, he's got nothing. It's like a guy who just learned boxing yesterday. Boxing matches where you see two guys just slugging it out, one guy lands a punch, and yeah, he landed a good punch. What Jake did is he slid back and landed a punch.
Yeah.
It's like the athleticism along with the intelligence, the technique. I'm like, he's not even doing it that long.
Yet the norms might have already been altered behind shut gates, and each blow bears more than mere force. What if it bears queries, repercussions, and rumors that might remodel a whole weight class? One eve, one square, two heavy hitters, and a tale that could make you ponder if everything you viewed was actual at all. The edge betwixt sport and show just faded, and the recoil is merely starting. Not loud, not dramatic, not made for showmanship. It is hush-restrained, nearly sterile, the sort of room where verdicts are gauged instead of declared in that silence. The current heavyweight terrain gently changes not via jab, but via thought, a thought that does not yell but stays. The hint that a bout even at the peak tier could be formed prior to the gong. Insinuation alone is ample to disturb a game based on volatility boxing endures, because no soul truly sees what will occur once the mitts meet, when that faith shakes the harm, extends far past. Any lone match, you know, for me, in my view, Anthony Joshua stands in this zone as a symbol formed by aftermath Olympic gold globe belts, losses that drove adaptation, triumphs that repaired reliability. His path has unrolled under study, but also under laws that were grasped even when endings were doubtful.
Is there anybody that's really surprised about this? Like, seriously, is there anybody that is actually surprised that Anthony Joshua just absolutely wrecked Jake Paul? Like, there should be nobody shocked about this whatsoever. This was literally such a mismatch from the beginning. We all knew that coming into this, but I mean, shout out to Jake for taking this matchup, right? Obviously, he was way in over his head. We all know that. But I feel like the most shocking thing to most people is the fact that Jake even made it as long as he did, right? A lot of the folks out there,
where he portrays the classic curve of heavyweight validity gained via proved combat and open peril facing that heritage is Jake Paul. A shape cast in a varied oven, one fed by networks instead of sponsors, by focus instead of governing groups. Paul's weight is not incidental. He has grasped how to skirt the aged wardens, how to cash in on the ring, lacking yielding power, how to spin boxing into a limb of a private label that solely has made him impossible to overlook when chat of a duel betwixt these two arises. It does not come as Dean, it comes as a split in the gate. The meanings are instant and uneasy on sheets. The bodily disparity is clear. Joshua is bigger, tougher, drilled for ages in a game that penalizes errors, sans pity. Standard outlook hints a short and savage finish, yet outlook is not surety. Joshua's late past has bared fragility, times where pause swapped reflex, where toughness was asked in boxing. Those queries never wholly fade, and in that vagueness, Paul's whole tactic dwells. He does not need to be backed. He needs fear to live. What shifts the heat of this tale is not the bout itself, but what is gossip to circle it, the notion that results could be debated, formed, and curbed, not openly, not officially, but in the dialect of clout and sway.
You know, for me, in my opinion, I think it's scripted a little bit because, you know, of the weight difference, and, you know, Joshua is a former, you know, champion. And also, you know, he's current, he's active, you know, and this is going to be the first time that we see Paul, you know, fighting an active fighter. You know what I mean? We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, you know what I'm saying? It's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real professional, you know, and so we'll see how it ends up in, you know, like I said, I think it's scripted.
This is where truth swaps with theater, since the most risky instants in ring lore seldom declare themselves. They slide in softly masked as chance, when a heavyweight victor talks coolly about why specific bouts feel off. Why sure gates stay shut despite the cash backing them. It hits harder than any slur. Calm is not frailty. Here, calm is limit. Placing Joshua's stance during this phase is marked. There's no chest thumping, no bid to rule the story. He does not need to pump himself. His job already stands as proof when he talks about tears, about piles of work, about truth with oneself. It is not rebuff. It is description. He is not refusing Paul's skill. He is refusing par in boxing. That nuance counts. Practice is not sized in rounds solely, but in repercussions endured. Joshua has been harmed, bested, queried, and urged to reform under the harshest beams. That history cannot be copied via marketing as training clips go. Round the split grows starker. Joshua's readiness is orderly, nearly milted. There is no vibe of a guy hunting approval, rather, there is forced toil, cycle, and grip. His team talks less about show and more about duty. Paul's readiness conversely stresses mindset as much methods. Pondering wind work and mental shaping. This is not random. Paul sees that faith is a tool. If he cannot rule bodily, he must unsettle. Mentally, boxing has always been mental, but rarely has that part been highlighted so purposely, because Joshua was still...
Was the fight fake? No, but was it rigged? Yes, entirely. Boxing didn't die tonight, but it's just been shown that it is entertainment and a behemoth of money spinning, and it's not a sport. Now, the first thing that showed the fight was rigged was at 2 minutes 19 left on the clock in the 6th round. Anthony took a nod from someone once Jake had been put down to finish the fight. A few other tactics that AJ did to sell the fight. Right from the outset, AJ only threw jabs, which were at the...
Pundits start to divide not on who ought to win, but on what they are viewing. Initial rounds open with a rate that feels curbed. Joshua puts stress, but does not fire wildly. Paul moves lives and evades prolonged trades. For some, this looks like a tactic. For others, it feels odd. The blow tallies are low. The tempo is wary. Watchers, used to havoc, start to query aim. This is where doubt turns toxic, since boxing buffs are taught to allow waiting, but only when it feels due. When waiting looks staged, distrust trails after the match. The din does not come instantly. There is no joint response. The lack of clearness becomes the tale. Talks start to spread that the duel did not go as planned. By all sides, linked that sure, caps might have been debated, that harm done surpassed. What was forecast, these are not pleas, simply denied, nor simply shown. They live in the gap where deals, hopes, and truth crash. From Paul's end, the story turns toward complaint. The hint rises that lines were breached, that aim counted, that hurt past concord. This is where boxing winces, since hurt is not a mishap in this game. It is the coin where boxers take risk, exactly, since results cannot be steered to backwardly cast wound, spiteful rather than innate tests. The base of rivalry, if that casting gets grip, the meanings are grave. Every trade becomes open to reanalysis. Every knockout becomes dubious.
That's why Jake Paul is so relevant, because he's found a way to bypass promoters and make money in the boxing rings instead of being a prisoner to the promoters. Even though he didn't fight anybody, he's about to fight Anthony Joshua, and we'll see what happens with that. Anthony Joshua should knock him into tomorrow because he's the bigger fighter with incredible power, but he's got a glass jaw. So if Jake Paul catches him, who knows?
The moment the story surfaced, it didn't sound like the usual noise that surrounds
world title in everyone's imagination. That's the heavyweight champ. You were here. Everyone else was here. But since then, the feeling has been Joshua makes all this money fighting anyway, 30 million pounds, whatever it is. Why should he take 40 or 50 to fight Wilder when he's making against anybody? He can make 30, 40 million pounds, whatever it is.
No fantasy contracts, just reality. You know, bringing our work to the table and bargaining and negotiating what we're worth and making this fight.
Joshua's reply stays slight. There is no open guard. No counterstrike. This check speaks heaps. Boxers who feel bare often overstate boxers, sure in their spot, do not his quiet urges, others to stuff the gap, and in doing so, shows the cracks inside the game. One wing sees the case as a sure clash betwixt fun and custom. The other sees a mark that should never have been neared, let alone passed the law. Murmurs grow. Sums are aired, fines, debated the thought that a boxer could be monetarily for boxing too efficiently disturbs even those used to boxing's paradoxes. Betting hubs, oversight groups, channels all become part of the talk, whether they wish to or not. If results were swayed, even vaguely, the honesty of the whole affair comes into query. Not just the bout, but the biome around it, the mob, the bets, the faith. This is where the tale expands. Since if such chats were feasible here, with a world icon in huge sight, what occurs lower down the rung? Boxers, lacking leverage, lacking stages, lacking the skill to stroll away. The strain on them is unseen, but real soft hints vague terms. Chances bound to obeying boxing has always lived in ethical fog zones, but this feels distinct. This feels endemic. The mental harm may outlive any law. Result once buffs start to query. Realness, the game loses something priceless. You're so brave. Boxing is not acted drama. It is gripping. Exactly. Since it defies command, the second crowds doubt otherwise. Bond moves from soulful stake to forensic study. Every feint becomes fishy. Every lull feels faked. That is not amusement. That is decay. Joshua's legend sits at the heart of this gale. Not since it is frail, but since it is set, he has already paid the toll. Boxing asks, losses remade him, wins revived him. His path does not need rebirth via newness. That makes him a solid item in a culture increasingly formed by pliability. Paul, on the flip side, blooms in that flex. His win relies on curving hopes, recasting results, and steering story. Neither way is wrongly baseless. The clash grows when they cross, as chats go on, behind shut gates. The game watches itself, agents weigh risk, channels rethink, packs. Young boxers watch, learn, maybe the ill lessons. The notion that force can be haggled, that aftermaths can be capped, that fact can be pruned. These notions do not fit cozily. In boxing, they upset the social pact betwixt boxer and fan. There is no tidy fix here, no final proof was shown openly. Paul keeps on holding focus his stage. Pull, the law cases. If they arose, will unroll slowly, intent, away from the ring. But the harm, if any, has already happened in the shared mind of the game.
He's not the same size. In what world does Jake Paul, in any facet, even touch Anthony Joshua? And if this is a real fight, which I think it is, it will be the most watched Jake Paul fight because he will get knocked out. For Anthony Joshua, he wins a decision to Jake Paul, or he were to lose by split decision, that would do more damage to his career than anything he's ever achieved. This would...
Joshua's response remains minimal. There is no...
It is further out, so boxing has outlived scandals, air-rigged bouts, corrupt referees. Using agents, it has lasted since at its heart. The gong still meant a thing. It signaled the start of an untamable trade. The dread now is not that one duel was flawed, but that the thought of flaw has been standardized. That hint, solely, is ample to leave a pit in the heavyweight story. As the dust falls, the unsolved queries stay, not charges, but doubts, not ends, but after effects. The next bout will be eyed differently, not with naivety, but with audit, and in a game that relies on trust, that slide may be the most hurting hit of all. The audit does not dim with time. It hones each, next showing each practice vid, each prudently picked. Word is now sieved through a glass that did not live prior. Boxers feel it, experts feel it, even quiet. Bears mass boxing has always lived with distrust at its rims, but this feels nearer to the hub, nearer to the prime show, nearer to the icons, meant to secure trust rather than try it. And once doubt hits that tier, it does not pull back simply. What becomes increasingly lucid is that this is no longer about a lone face-off or a debated view. It is about power, who keeps it, how it's used, and where it halts. Classic boxing power was once centered in agents ruling bodies and channels. Boxers steered that build with scarce agency. The newer mode flips that math. Stage-led boxers arrive with their own crowds, their own income flows, their own sway that shift was faded.
What he was actually doing was aiming for Jake's shoulder, so it was just deflecting all the power and all the blows. AJ could have finished this fight at any second from round 1, but he didn't, so kudos for Jake for taking the fight, and kudos for Jake taking the broken jaw. But if AJ had literally walked in on his shot as he should have, he would have died. If you look closely, AJ's last shot was from distance, and what I mean is have a look at his back leg. It is further out. So
Boxing has survived scandals before, fixed fights.
Let me know in the replies. What was not faded was the crash betwixt that clout and the hope of steered endings. Joshua's spot inside this instant is teaching he is not vying for ethical rule, nor placing himself as a rescuer of the game. He simply lives as a balance. His career has been formed by loss as much as win by times where no term, no grasp. No story could ease the score that lived. Trial builds a defiance to recasting force as something fixable. For him, the ring stays a spot where aim is single and outcome inescapable. That outlook is not olden. It is bedrock across the game. Talks drift quietly. Coaches remind boxers of what deals do and do not guard. Managers become more wary with speech agents. Recheck the looks of crossover shows. None of this occurs openly, but it occurs firmly. Boxing adjusts not via declarations, but via conduct. The lack of like plans elsewhere may be the most telling result of all when fans stop trusting in the risks. They stop buying emotionally. Boxing cannot bear that decay, not in an age already vying with tidier, more ruled fights.
Actually rooting for him, not against him. And think about the views and the fanfare for his comeback fight. Now, I don't totally think this is true, but a little bit of me thinks so. That it's a cynical PR move to change Jake Paul's image, flip the script so he can keep fighting nobodies and people will keep watching. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.
What was not inevitable was the collision between that leverage and the expectation of controlled outcome.
That's essentially what Jake was doing the whole fight. Sticking and moving, making it awkward, knew he was outgunned. Right, and if you've ever been in there, right, when you're sparring with someone that just doesn't, you know, they're way outskilled compared to you, right? And you start marching them down, right? They're running around, right? They're clinching up, they're doing awkward things, they're just not necessarily willing to engage. It could be actually kind of hard to get to somebody, right? And Jake does know what he's doing. You know what I mean? Jake's not like some clueless guy in there, but obviously we all knew he is clearly not the caliber of someone as Anthony Joshua. At least he shouldn't be.
Jake's not like some mindless chap in there, but clearly we all knew he is plainly not the grade of someone as Anthony Joshua. At least he shouldn't be. The lawful angle stays unsettled, floating rather than moving. That too is key. Drawn out vagueness aids no one yet. It endures. It implies rival aims, weighing exposure versus settlement in that void. Guesswork blooms, and guesswork, once planted, becomes immune to fixing. Even a final decree would strain to refund what doubt has already seized. Younger boxers watch this instant closely. Some will see chance proof that pull can be made quickly, notice, can outweigh records. Others will see peril, a warning that trust once doubted is hard to regain, which lesson rules may form. The next breed, more than any belt match culture, is passed quietly via model rather than teaching. As for the heavyweight class itself, it stands at a turning point. Heavyweights have always borne iconic mass beyond straps. They stand for validity, peril, and closure when their bouts are seen as flawed. The whole ladder shakes. Joshua's presence steadies that frame for now, but no person can hold it endlessly. The setup must choose what it stands and what it denies. There is no theatric close to this part, no final word that shuts the text. Rather, there is a hanging strain, a sense that something vital was tried and did not snap, but did warp. Whether it warps further hangs on picks yet to be made. That pact stays whole, but it now bears an added term unsaid. Grasped realness is no longer presumed. It must be proven every time the gong rings.